Hey, everyone, and welcome to episode 170 of the Custom Apparel Startups Podcast. My name is Mark Stevenson.
And this is Mark Vila. And today we're going to talk about Etsy. Should you move your store off Etsy? What are alternatives to Etsy? All about some Etsy store stuff, because we talk about this a lot, and it recently popped up in the news.
Yeah, we, a lot of our customers buy for Etsy. Not just our small customers either. We've got somebody that purchased a $50,000 or $60,000 UV printer to make wooden signs that they'd been hand painting, and their business like quadrupled over the next 6 months because their capacity did. So Etsy is not just for small sellers, even though that's how it started out. If you are not on Etsy right now, when they first started, it was strictly kind of a maker space. So people that made their own goods in small quantities would have a great kind of social place to sell online. And it was a big hit. And just recently it hit my news feed that there was a little bit of a hubbub because they raised their fees. And the way that a lot of these platforms work, almost any platform works, is you either pay by the month, you pay a percentage of sales, you pay by listing, or you do one or all of them together. And just this latest increase from 5% of sales to 6.5% kind of struck a chord with a lot of Etsy sellers. So this question came up. I mean, is it time to bail? Is it time to move away from Etsy? Is it worth it? That's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. And if anybody from if like some Etsy CEO corporate C-suite types are listening.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Etsy. I think it's a great platform. This isn't a bash.
That's good. I like that. That little CYA.
No, but it's definitely not a bash Etsy podcast. And I think it's about the right answer. And the folks over at Etsy, I'm confident, are just like the folks over at Amazon and eBay and other places where people sell. Is they have a core group of people that buy and sell there. And those are the people who really do well, and they want to expand on that audience and get more people. But just some stores just don't work on these platforms for various reasons.
Right.
There's like some of the customization stuff, just Amazon is just not really fulfilling. Amazon through custom stuff is not really big at what they do. That's not what it's known for. Where Etsy's known for that. Right. So
that's a good point.
Yeah. So why don't we jump into a few things, see what we're going to talk about today. Where do we start? How do we want to start this off? So
first, what I'd like to do is start with some math. I think we should do a little I don't want to call it a reality check. That sounds a little harsh.
Okay.
But what I want to do is, we've done some episodes recently on ROI on the podcast. And we just recently finished a sample job, Digital Heat Effects, 16 t-shirts. And we dug way into the granular levels of ROI on producing a 16 shirt order. How much it costs to make, how much are the blank t-shirts, what are the transfer costs, how much is a toner, what's a percentage of fuser, what can you sell it for? All this stuff we got really in depth in the video that Hannah did, in the article that's coming. And this really reminds me of that, because if you're selling on Etsy, you're going to take all those ROI numbers, and part of your cost of sale is going to be, now it used to be 5%. Now it's going to be 6.5% of sales. And that sounds like a big number. But I mean, we were doing some math, Mark, right before the podcast, and I'll just pull up my calculator again.
Okay.
Well, actually, let me ask you,
Sure.
Mark Vila.
All right.
What do you think a typical Etsy seller makes in a month? What do you think their revenues are?
The typical.
Google it. Google it real quick and pretend you just knew it off the top.
Because I feel like, this has got to be one of those places where, the 1% make 90% of the revenue, and most people sell nothing.
Yes.
So, what does the average Etsy seller make a month? Let's see if we have this.
I'm going to guess $8,000.
Wow. Okay. Well, at the median, shop owners brought $537 in a month. or $518 after Etsy fees.
So $518.
Yeah, this is according to a website I've never heard before. So I'm going to take that as fact.
Okay. So in that case, let's use a number that's more interesting.
Okay.
Let's say that you make $10,000 a month on Etsy. You're selling custom t-shirts, or you're selling custom signs, or you're doing other wonderful things, and you're making 10 grand a month on Etsy, and $10,000 a month times the fee went from 5% to 6.5%. So we're going to multiply that 10,000 by 1.5%, and we come up with $150 a month. So
okay.
So do you understand? Like, they were already paying
5%, right?
Yep. $500 a month.
Okay, they're spending. So if you're making $10,000 a month, you're giving Etsy 500 of that before. And now you're going to give them 650. That, by the way, this isn't like, you still pay a credit card fee and such.
Oh yeah.
This is just like your Etsy store fee.
Yeah, this isn't the only fee by any means. There's all kinds of other things that you end up with.
Yeah, and so when it talks about the price increase, I will say that when it comes to that number, $10,000 in revenue, you're going from 500 to 150. I mean, it's not $0, but it's not something that is necessarily breaking your store.
Yeah, so this is kind of where that individual choice comes in, and how you view your expenses. For example, my wife, who's eavesdropping on the podcast right now, would consider that extra $150 completely unacceptable.
Okay.
Right. All right. Because they're not increasing their service level. Right. They're not saying, hey, we're going to charge you an extra 1.5%, an extra $150 a month if you're selling 10,000. But look what we're going to do for you. We're also, we're increasing our service level. No, it's just like our expenses went up. So someday we may want to do some more stuff for you guys. We're going to charge you an extra 1.5%. Okay. So that's not necessarily the way they characterized it. But if you are someone that pays more attention to the expenses than the average seller, then this is going to absolutely drive you crazy. If you're making 10 grand a month and you're not worried about that $150, you may not have even noticed the increase.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. We sell at ColDesi, in our supply store, we sell stuff, right? Obviously. And, some of those things are like cones of thread or bags of rhinestone that are like $5 products, we'll just say. And prices aren't stagnant on things in the world. Prices change all the time. And we've had a price increase on thread that was some time ago, but it was not much change. Right. Quarter, 10 cents, and a lot of people just accepted, because that's the way business goes. Sometimes
didn't even notice.
You didn't notice because our prices went up. I mean, that's the way that it goes, because the factory's prices went up. And because of the cost of their raw materials went up. So that's how things flow. And most people didn't notice, didn't care, because in reality, if you're spending $5 for a cone of thread or $5.15, and you're using that one cone of thread to go on 100 left chest logos, it makes relatively no difference to your business.
No difference
that dime, right? Now, so that was a whole group of folks. There's a small percentage of people that obsessed over it.
Yeah.
The last time it cost me $15 to buy thread. This time it cost me almost $16, or whatever the number was.
And that just launches them off into the internet to spend 3 days looking for $15.10 cones of thread.
Yeah.
Right. So, and not because they can't afford the extra money or that it's germane to the success of their business, but because they have that fixed price in mind. Like, this is what I should be paying. This is what I've always paid. And there's been a change. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot in the Etsy crowd.
Sure. Well, what's an annoying thing too about doing business in general is it's not just the 1.5% increase in that Etsy has, but it's also the cost of my raw material went up. The cost of whatever I use to,
Right.
if I paint stuff, the cost of my paint brushes went up. The cost of this went up, and I was selling stuff for $20 a piece before, and I don't know if I just don't really know if my customers want to pay 25. And I think that if I want to stay in business, that's where I have to be. And this is just another tick in that notch of me not being able to sell the product for what I sold it for a year or two ago. And I've got concerns about whether I'm going to continue to be in business. I think that's a real feeling.
Yeah. Especially every time you go and pump gas.
Yeah. Hopefully you get your
driving to wherever you're going
close by.
Yeah. So, but I think that probably caused a lot of people to find this podcast, we picked the title on purpose, Etsy Alternatives. Should I move my store off Etsy? Is a hot topic right now because of all those people that were inspired by this fee increase to just pay more attention and to take a look at not only what the deal is to have an Etsy store, which still seems pretty reasonable to me. But is there a better deal out there? Can I get better service? Can I get more customers? Can I do business for less if I move my site to another platform?
Sure. And I'll say out of the gate, has to be copycat organizations that are just like Etsy that exist out there.
Sure.
I don't know what any of them are, and your customers don't necessarily either. That doesn't mean that there's not money to be made there, but that I think maybe moves into the next topic on. I think we should talk about why you chose Etsy in the first place. We kind of went over a little bit, but we should just be clear.
I mean, you just said why most people choose Etsy is because everyone knows what it is. We didn't have to explain what Etsy was.
Yeah.
I don't have to explain what eBay or Amazon are.
Yeah.
Etsy is it's an online shopping brand name with huge name recognition and hundreds of thousands of people that shop on it on a regular basis. That's going to be my guess. I mean, there are people there all the time. So when you say reason number one that maybe you had got a store on Etsy is because it's Etsy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's becomes of what do you're considering what you sell. You sell monogram pillowcases, and maybe whether you came to the conclusion on your own or not, but if you go to a group full of people, you're at a little dinner party and you say, I'm actually thinking about selling those monogram pillowcases I make online. If you're at a small dinner party, at least one person is going to say Etsy.
Yeah.
Because that's where to go to get a personalized thing. That's very much part of their brand. That's what a lot of people know. And I've, being in the industry that we're in, all the time I get people that will say to me, oh, okay, a lot of your customers probably sell on Etsy.
Yes.
Or oh, do you sell to Etsy? And I'm just like, you just have no clue how the world works, do you? But anyway, so it's just a well-known thing and it's out there. So that's why you probably brought your store to Etsy, is you recognize that what I sell seems to be something that what people go to Etsy to buy.
Yep.
Generally speaking.
And I'll also say it's a beautiful site. I mean, it's put together beautifully there. I have if I were going to model a craft or personalized products marketplace, then Etsy is what I would choose to copy completely.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff here. I see custom books, custom mugs, custom ring holders, little doll with maybe some custom embroidery or something like that on it, a wallet. There's just a ton. I mean, and then there's even just custom made furniture. I mean, there's all types of interesting things on here. So what happens is you, why you went to Etsy more than likely is you got a product that you wanted to sell online. You didn't want to dump a bunch of money into building a website and getting people to come to the website.
Right.
So you went to Etsy because you had a credit card you can put in there and they were going to charge you 20 cents to get started. So for 20 cents, you got started, and they said, well, we're going to charge you 5% to sell plus 20 cents. And then we're going to charge you the credit card company is going to charge you a fee, which will come out of your Etsy invoice as well. And then now you can sell online. And while you're at it, people are coming here to look for products like yours, and they will search for products like yours. And we also give you a way that if you choose to pay more money, your products can be at the top of that list. So, I mean, how wonderful is that for a really small business to be able to get started?
I mean, there are very few ways that somebody working out of their back bedroom quilting can get into business in 20 minutes
for almost nothing, really.
For almost nothing. Yeah.
Because you don't pay until you sell something. You think you pay 20 cents, I believe, if I'm correct.
You pay let's see. 25 cents a transaction, 20 cents per listing.
For a listing. So it's cost you 20 cents to get started, basically.
It's
so
free.
That's very cool. So that's why you went to Etsy in the first place. Now, I think in our notes here, Mark, I've got some things out of order. I really think the question is, who should consider moving from Etsy?
Okay.
Then if you determine that you're on this list, or you want to know how to get to that list of the people who should maybe move out one day because you'd like to, a lot of people consider they'd like to outgrow Etsy is another thing too.
Right.
That's a thing that people consider. Then we can kind of talk about what that looks like, what that means, who might that be. And then afterwards we'll talk about the different options of selling online and about how much those cost. And maybe we can take that $10,000 number, Mark, and
work it a few different ways.
And then we'll talk about, since you're not in the Etsy marketplace, how do you get business if you're not in there?
Okay. So I would say that, who should move from Etsy? If you haven't been successful on the platform, in other words, if you've been, a lot of people have unsuccessful Etsy stores. It's just part of business. Not everybody makes it. They don't pay attention. They're not working. Etsy is a platform also that it's better the more that you work it. So if you're not participating on a regular basis, it's just sitting there. Maybe it's not doing anything for you. Maybe this price increase is just a little bit of a wake-up call and a reminder that there are other things out there. So if you're not getting any sales on Etsy anyway, then stop paying any of the fees and just move off of it because there's no downside. If your sales are subpar or non-existent, if you're on Etsy, then just, you can just close that up and look at the alternatives. Maybe you'll be successful on another platform.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different way than I was thinking about it.
Okay.
But if you're not being successful on Etsy, then I would strongly consider what type of work are you putting in to be successful? Do you have a viable product that's priced well? And are you using any of the platform's tools to be able to be found? Right. Because that's why people would buy your things. They don't buy it because they don't like the pictures of it. They don't like the price of it. They're not finding it. Or nobody is really looking or shopping for that product because it's so unique, right?
Right. They're not looking on Etsy, but they may be looking on another platform.
They may be looking on another platform. Sure, absolutely. And one of the things is that I was considering about is I have an interesting retro video game collection behind me.
Okay.
And I needed some parts for it for an old Super Nintendo. I needed a part for it to be able to fix it, to get it working again. I didn't want to go to Etsy for that. I didn't even think
that makes
about
sense.
going there. Right.
So
what
I heard you just say is there are not that many Uber nerds that shop on Etsy.
Well, I think really it's just if you need an old electronic used part.
Yeah.
That's probably not where people are going.
I mean, yeah, let's go with that. I mean, if you're looking for a biker jacket, maybe not, you don't go to Etsy.
Okay.
Etsy has a demographic. And my comment about Uber Nerd is that that's not it. If you just call up a picture of what you think a typical Etsy shopper might be, you're probably correct. Not completely correct, because there's definitely outliers, but someone that is looking for more for craft items or for customized items, the buyer for Tampa Electric is not looking for custom polos on Etsy.
Mm-hmm.
The guy running a tire shop is not looking for things to give to his customers on Etsy.
Probably not.
Right. So probably. Now, where might they look?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they might go to eBay.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I got my stuff. And that's kind of where I was leading.
There you go.
But it's not a personalized item.
Right.
It's a used electronic, and I figured, where could I find used electronics easily on the internet? eBay. Right. Going a little further from what you said there. I mean, if you just go to Etsy's homepage and just look at the entire homepage, and you look at all the pictures and all the categories, it very well leans towards a certain type of person. I'm not saying who that person is necessarily, but it's definitely, there's a lot of theme. We've got necklaces, gift baskets, linen clothing, on sale. It's a picture of a ring.
Yep.
We've got a gift basket with some succulents in it. I mean, right off the gate,
there's a pink baby girl gift. There's
matching pajamas,
two candles hugging.
If you haven't figured it out yet, I mean, I've bought none of these things ever. Right. I mean, so I'm not the demographic.
Makes sense.
But I have bought off Etsy before. Right. So, I mean, but it's a rare thing. So kind of going back from there, what you had said, Mark, is if you could be selling a product that just doesn't move here on very well. It doesn't fit into that demographic of folks who would like that stuff. So it's all an interesting point. But when we're talking about if you should move from Etsy or not, so you've covered kind of unsuccessful.
Yes.
Right. Unsuccessful is two things. You're not putting the work in or using the platform right. And you do sell boxes with succulent gift sets, right? Then you're just not doing it. You're not doing it right or better than other folks. Or you're selling products out there that folks just don't buy on there. Now, there is a personalized wallet I'm looking on here. But this is a gift for like dad.
Yep.
Because dad didn't go here to buy it probably.
Right.
Just based on how their website looks and based on the people that I know that shop there and things like that. But further from that, there's another side of if you're considering moving from Etsy, and that's how you get your business. So if you are hustling online, social media, you've got followers, you're commenting on things, you're going to forums, you're going to, anywhere, Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and you're hustling and you're making stuff and you're referring people to your Etsy store to shop. And you look at your stats and kind of how you're getting your business. And if it doesn't appear you're getting much organic Etsy traffic, meaning people are going to Etsy, searching for thank you boxes and finding your product and buying it, but instead people are following the link because they saw you on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, and buying that way, then Etsy is your online store. It's not where you're generating your business.
And that's an important point because now those expenses look different.
The expenses do look different. That's a great way. Now the other is if you have a somewhat recognizable brand. And it doesn't have to be huge. It could be very, very small. But if you sell a particular type of gift box, Joanne's gift boxes, something like that, and you actually have like some people searching for you online, and it could be relatively small, but you're getting business because people see your product in someone's house, say, I want to buy that for my mom too. And then they Google search it and they find your Etsy store and buy it from there. You're generating business another way that isn't necessarily because of Etsy.
Right.
So should you stay at an Etsy is if you're getting business, in my opinion, if you're
Yep.
getting business from Etsy because of Etsy successfully, then the cost of business just goes up in general online. And unless you have a plan of selling differently, it's good for you. This is how you make your money.
Yep.
You're utilizing the platform in the right way.
So I'm going to add one more thing, one more reason that you might want to move from Etsy is if you are planning investing tons of money. So you mentioned putting in the work on another outside the platform or becoming kind of the household name. You get name recognition and now people are searching for you. It could be that you're ready to get to the next level and you're going to be investing in paid ads, or you're going to be hiring someone to go out and physically sell your product, or you're going to add it to a promotional products catalog. And so now, again, you have other sources that you're actually writing a check for. And all Etsy is, again, is your store, and you're paying fees and not getting all the benefits that everyone else on the platform is. And you could easily switch that business from the catalog or from your paid ads or from your salesperson's efforts over to any other platform independent of Etsy, and it would not impact your sales.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point. Is that if so I guess point being is if your business can be generated independent of Etsy, then you can actually save money and do more, market better for yourself. Yeah. Because we use. I'll give an example of this just to explain it a little better. We use YouTube and we get a lot of business from YouTube by putting videos on YouTube, telling people how to do things, helping them and guiding them to our store where you can buy the products.
Yep.
Right. We also have training videos and other educational content that's specifically for our customers, for people who have chose to purchase equipment from us. Well, we don't put those videos on YouTube, because we know that when somebody goes to YouTube, YouTube is going to show them 40 other videos related to that. And most of those are not going to be ours. Right.
So what you're saying is that, we have like how to do XYZ with an Avance embroidery machine that's meant for training. We won't put that on YouTube because somebody is going to one of our customers is going to go there and look at that, and they're going to see 8 other videos for different embroidery machines, different thread, different stuff that we sell that other people are selling.
Yes. Yeah. So right there will be an advertisement potentially. So someone else's ad. So if you are hustling for business, whatever that means, right? Whether you're physically doing the work or you're paying someone to do the work or you're paying for ads, you're hustling to get business and you send them to an Etsy store, you're sending them to a place where right next to your product is going to be a competitive product being advertised.
That's a great point.
And that's tough. It's tougher to get work because a percentage of those people won't buy from you. They were relatively ready to buy from you.
Right.
To a degree, because they clicked on the link wherever it was. They saw something on TikTok. They saw the words. You told them, hey, find me on Etsy, search up thinking of you, gifts. And they went there and they searched for that and they found your product and they found a bunch of competition. And they were considering buying your pack until they saw a similar pack for $10 less with free shipping. Yeah. And then they went for that one. Or they just saw one that they liked better. Oh, wow, this one's actually $10 more, but look how much more it comes with, and you don't offer that product.
It's funny. It's actually kind of one of the many reasons that you don't see ColDesi at many trade shows. Is because if you guys are in the same situation, if you make custom t-shirts, would you go sell custom t-shirts at a custom t-shirt selling event with 10 other vendors that do what you do? Or would you go to one that has nothing to do with your product line, with your competitors? If you go to a trade show, then, you are inviting people to see your competitors along with you. You're kind of doing that whenever you send somebody to your Etsy store.
Yeah. And I think further to explain that a little bit deeper would be, if you are out there hustling your t-shirt event and telling people to come see you, so
Yes.
you're actually generating foot traffic.
You're marketing, right?
You're generating foot traffic to come see you. They might not even, so they came because of you. They might not even get to your booth before they spent the $100 that they were planning on spending that day, and they turn around and left. Compared to if you told them to go to your store or go online.
Yep,
So
exactly
I think everyone should be able to get that pretty well now. Okay. So now that you kind of understand if your store is potentially good for on or off Etsy, which is just you're not successful, it's the wrong platform, or you're doing all the hustling and you're not getting any of the Etsy benefits, then maybe you should move. If you're getting all the Etsy benefits and they raised your fee a little bit, but they promise that one day in the future they're going to do more stuff that will help you, then that's your business, right? That's how you're getting business.
You're making these decisions.
If you don't like that, then you can change how you're going to do business. And we could discuss that later on. But for now, that's your business. And if it's still successful, then be happy to a degree you're working with a platform that wants to make itself better. And that's what they want to do. They want to use this money, I would imagine, to increase their reach, increase the size of their store, increase the platform, maybe become a place more like eBay. I don't know what their future is. Right. So saying that, let's go ahead and talk about what does it cost to open up your own store? Was that a good place to go next?
And it's not just because now you're talking about talking about two different things, right? You're talking about replacing the functionality of Etsy.
Mm-hmm.
And then any additional costs you might incur getting the traffic that Etsy would otherwise provide just by being Etsy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So nuts and bolts first, maybe we can talk about alternative platforms, e-commerce platforms where you can sell your stuff, provided you set it all up. And we'll take a look at the fees.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. So what does it cost to open up an online store? That's kind of the question. And we'll go through kind of the big ones that people talk about and what that costs. And we can just kind of run through some of these fees because a lot of folks don't necessarily know what it costs. And we're going to go ahead and there's really two answers to this. And there's a really long answer that I'm going to answer in a really short way to start. And then we'll talk about all the really common ways that people do. I didn't write this down, Mark, by the way. So
that's okay. No problem.
So if you would like to, if you're on Etsy, I'm making an assumption that you are good with the whole DIY thing. You probably went to Etsy, made your own listing, took your own pictures, or had a friend take pictures for you. You posted it on, you did it all yourself. So that's an assumption I'm making. Now, maybe you didn't, or maybe you no longer want to do that. So you decide to go out there and find somebody who builds e-commerce stores. Okay. No matter what platform they put it on, you're not going to spend anything less than, on the super cheapest end, if you got somebody who does it out of their parents' house, $1,000 or overseas, maybe.
That's what I was thinking.
Like lowest possible.
Yeah.
And that's probably not gonna be that great. It's not going to be integrated that much with stuff. Once you get into like, I don't know, 5,000 ish, you start getting into probably something that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's probably a pretty good range for a bunch of startups. And then anything over 5,000 up to forever, 5 million, but is where the rest goes. And that depends on how much customization you want to do and different add-ins and tie-ons and all types of stuff that you'd like to do.
Yeah. And so let me just chime in here. So these are all things when you sign up for your Etsy store, these are pretty much things that are already done for you. You're going to pick a template, you're going to load in your products. If you took good pictures, you've got the basics done. So that's what Mark is talking about for the $1,000 or somewhere around there. You're going to get the basics done. You're going to get the ability to do those things, to put your products online. have it look decent. Mark has much more an optimistic thought about you guys, that you did a good job. So I want to just differentiate that. Just because you could upload a picture and put a price and write down the word that your product was, does not mean that you did a good job. So the Etsy platform takes some of that pressure off you for, a little bit, doing all the right keywords and doing image optimization and speed optimization and a lot of the technical and SEO stuff that will bring somebody to your product. So you're much more likely, I think, to accomplish those things, even if you're not good at it on Etsy, than you are trying to replicate that yourself, even if you did it yourself on Etsy on another platform.
Sure. And as we walk through some of these platforms, specifically, I targeted ones that I would consider to be closest to that type of environment.
Consumer friendly,
startup friendly, yep. Somebody who is going to DIY friendly. Okay. So, start off with Shopify. It's one of the biggest ones out there now. They do kind of a lot of that for you. They make sure, they will tell you this is that when you want to upload an image, this is the size it should be. So they're going to lock in parameters to make sure that you are doing things that fit within the box.
Yep.
And it's a popular platform. And if you're generating your own business through hustling in whatever way it is, and you can open up a Shopify store for a monthly payment, a little bit more than you would spend to get started on Etsy. What did we say? It was like 20 cents. So this is like 30, right. Like $30. Relatively, I mean, it's coffee money, it's not a lot of money. Now their monthly fee, you're going to pay a monthly fee for most everything we're talking about afterwards. And they start at about 30, they go up to about 300. I read a lot of the statistics. Most startups are probably going to be 30 or $80 a month.
Okay.
It depends on how much control you'd like. If you want to have like some reports to look at what's selling, or a little more freedom, you're going to pay a little more money for that. But you can get started for $30 a month. And if you are selling 4 or 5 products, 10 products, and you are selling them through social media or Facebook groups, or through literally in-person hustling, going places, telling people to buy your stuff, for $30 a month, you could just refer people there. And you'd pay $30 a month plus, let's just say, roughly 3% in a credit card fee.
Okay.
That's, by the way, this is all out as of the date the podcast was uploaded, or the date the notes were written, which is mid-April 2022. So in the 10-year future, somebody listening to this,
you're crazy.
The AI bots have taken control of everything. And be thankful you're allowed to listen to this podcast. But anyway, but this is probably all going to be relatively the same, I would guess, for all of the next year or two, pretty close to this stuff. This stuff usually doesn't change drastically.
So let's just take a quick look at that. If you were the bigger store, you're in the $10,000 a month range, and you're paying to Etsy that 6.5% fee, you're at $650 a month.
Okay.
Right. With Shopify and plus 25 cents a transaction.
You did 6.5% plus 3% plus 25 cents.
No, I just did the math on the $650 is 6.5%.
Okay.
But you're also, for every transaction, however many transactions that adds up to, you're going to pay 25 cents a transaction. On Etsy, and there's another fee in there.
There's a credit card fee.
Which is going to be variable.
Yeah, relatively 3% on Etsy as well.
So with Shopify, you're going to be relatively significantly ahead. I mean, you'll spend a little bit more per instance, per transaction fee of 30 cents. But, at that $30 a month, maybe let's say it's $100 a month. That's a lot better than the $650.
Yeah. I mean, you're so relatively speaking there, kind of just compare, or apple to orange, apple to apple, whatever comparison it would be. If you're doing all the hustling and you're not doing a ton of sales, but you're doing a reasonable amount of sales a month, you're doing, six figures a year in sales. Your Etsy fee could be $500-600 a month, and your Shopify fee might be 30 or 100.
Yep.
And then both of them, you're going to pay a credit card fee.
Right. Which is real money. You're talking about $5,000 or $6,000 a year at that point.
Oh yeah. And it's a good amount of money, but you're really not going to get away from that anywhere unless you're in cash business.
Yep.
So that's a big difference right there for you, you know. Next we'll go down. BigCommerce is another one that's out there. Their fees are pretty much exactly the same within points percentage, you know, almost exactly the same. And they're going to do the same thing. They're going to offer you a nice, simple startup plan, a simple to build out website. You pick a theme, you fit within that theme, just like you do on Etsy. You fill out all the blanks, and then you hit go, and the store is live.
Right.
And they're going to charge you like $30 or $300 a month to run that store, somewhere in that range. And if you're selling $10,000 a month, you've cut your costs by less than 1/3.
Yeah. And you will pay, like you've written down here, a 49-cent transaction fee.
They're going to charge a little bit less in the percent, a little bit more in the transaction. And that's how kind of all of them are. It's like getting a mortgage or a car loan too. You know, your interest rate was 4%, but they charged you a $3,000 fee. And the next guy charges you 3.5%, but he charges you a $5,000 fee. Yep. Everybody makes their money.
Yes.
Everyone makes their money. If the shipping is free, the product costs more, you know? Right. So that's kind of what you're looking at with BigCommerce. So about 30 to 300 to run it, about 2 to 2.59% for a credit card, and a 49-cent per transaction fee every time they use a credit card, which they did because they bought online.
So the next one is Wix, which I had my first experience looking behind the scenes of a Wix e-commerce site recently, and it looked pretty easy to do.
Yeah,
very attractive.
I have a friend that runs one, and I've been in the back end of that a lot. And the Wix platform is similar. Theirs is their platform is it's pretty cool as like a little marketing hub. You know, so they do like a lot of things within it to help you market within the platform. And their fee is right now is $27 to $60 a month, 2.9% for the credit card fee, and 30 cents for the transaction. So again, we're going to, if you're doing all the hustling and you have the top of the line Wix site to sell, it's costing you $60 a month compared to maybe 600 or more. We're using that 10,000 number.
That's a big difference. Now, also, you know, all of these have their own little plugins that they offer for different features and different product features and upgrades and things like that. So, you know, the vanilla sites, you know, the basics may start the same, but the directions you may and can grow might be a little bit different for platform as well.
Yep.
So just saying there's a reason you might choose one over another, independent of just, man, Wix only charges me $27 a month, I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
You know, there's a little bit more to it.
I would just, if you're looking at this, honestly, you just go to their websites, look at them, go with the one that speaks to you.
Yeah. We're not making a recommendation.
Nope. Or go to the one that you have a friend who also does it, who's willing to help you learn with it, or whatever that might be. The 2.59 versus 2.9, 30 cents versus 49 cents. The math is going to work out and not matter that much. But really it's a matter of you being successful on the platform.
But I will say, you know, you mentioned the math again, and then I'm going to beat up eBay in just a second.
Sure. Okay.
You mentioned the math, you know, if you're in that, you know, if you're really selling, you know, I mentioned, you know, saving $5,000 in fees, you know, between a Shopify, for example, and an Etsy store. Yeah. I mean, that's $5,000 that you could invest in marketing. You know, so maybe that's something that you can put that into either category. You may look at that $5,000 and say, I get with Etsy store, I'm having some success. I don't have to worry about any of that. You know, with these other stores, you're going to have to drive your own traffic one way or the other. Maybe you can take that $5,000 and do that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. As the money can be the money can be used differently if you want to operate more independently.
Yep.
It's a good point. So we talked about Etsy already. That's on our list here. Currently, it's 20 cents a listing, 6.5 for the transaction. So you don't pay a monthly store fee. You pay kind of every time you sell something, and then they charge 3% for the credit card and 25 cents a transaction.
There you go.
Now, next there's eBay, which
I hate it.
was the most confusing one.
I hate
to
it.
look up how much it cost.
This is why one of the several reasons that I dislike eBay. It's I've been using it off and on since it was new, because I'm old, right?
Yeah.
So since eBay was new, I've looked at it, and I've bought a couple things off of it, and I've looked at selling on it at least half a dozen times over the year. And just like you, my impression is always, at first, I can't figure this out. There are little transaction fees and listing fees and things like that in so many different places. It's a surprise every time I get a bill.
Well, if any C-suite executives of eBay are listening, I'm a fan.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't want you to get banned from the platform or anything, but if you are in the C-suite of eBay, maybe that you can book a time on the CAS podcast to talk with Mark Vila about how great your platform is.
Well, no, but joking aside, we're here to talk about some facts on it, right? And and it is a little bit confusing, but they designed it. I believe, from what I understand, the purpose behind it is that they try to charge fees that are really relative for what is being sold, and not everything operates on the same type of fees or margin. And therefore they charge a little bit differently for those things.
Yep.
So I've seen like 3 to 15% as kind of a range. There's also some dollar amount ranges. So if you're selling a car on there, they're going to charge a different fee than if you're selling a t-shirt. And actually, I see why that makes sense.
It does.
It does make sense. So, but from what I looked like, if you're selling like t-shirts or mugs and stuff like that, customized things like that, it looks like it's about a 12 to 14% range. Now that is, theirs is all inclusive. There's no credit card fee. There's
no monthly fee.
No monthly fee. You might pay 8% for what you're selling. You might pay 15%, depending what it is. And they know that theirs is a similar platform. People go to eBay because they're shopping for something, and then they search through all those, and then they find the one that best fits them. Yep. And you can choose to advertise and do all the other types of stuff like you can on Etsy.
Right. So in other words, you can choose to feature your listing. You can choose to have different, more photos and pay a little bit more. It's a very common format that they invented. Mm-hmm. Basically that you'll find on Auto Trader. You load up your own pictures, you write your own descriptions, you upgrade your listing to be shown more often, same kind of thing.
Yeah. And so we can see that depending on what you're selling, if your eBay fee was going to be 8%, and your Etsy fee might have been 9.5%.
Right.
Conversely, your eBay fee might be 12%, and your Etsy fee might have been 9.5%.
Or it might not matter because your product just wouldn't sell well on eBay.
Yeah. Or on Etsy.
Or the reverse.
Yes. And the other is, depending on what you're selling and how many you plan to sell, the little percentage differences might not make that big of a difference. So you go with the platform that is going to work better for you.
Yeah. Another way to look at it is, you can think about it of where are your customers? Because I would say that eBay, out of all of these, eBay is the most equivalent to Etsy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's already a customer experience in place. And if you go to the Etsy store, if you go to Etsy's main site and you look at it and those are your customers, or you go to the eBay store and look at it and just think to yourself, those are obviously my customers, then you're halfway towards making that decision, right? On which one of those is best for you.
Yeah. And what's great about both of those platforms is that people are already going there, and you just have to sell something and be found there, which is nice. And it's a lot easier if you're selling, custom gift baskets to be found if somebody goes to eBay or Etsy than it is if somebody just goes to Google and searches for custom gift baskets.
Correct. Because even though just think about that for a moment, because that's a great point. There might be 1,000 people selling custom gift baskets on Etsy and 1,200 people selling those on eBay, but there's 150,000 of them selling them on Google.
Yeah, or just selling them just on the internet, period.
On the internet. So, you're definitely competing in a different pond.
Yeah. So now that we've got these, and then there's a ton of other platforms out there, and we don't want to, not give any of them, credit to chat about, but there's limited time here on the podcast, and we already take a good amount of your time. And I think that all of these are just popular platforms they're all talking about, and you can see really the cost difference between them. So now it's about getting the business right. Now, we already talked about the folks who they're making the decision to switch platforms because they already are getting the business through social media, through ads, through whatever they're doing. So how do you get the business if you want to move platforms and you're not doing any of that? So you might sell 10 gift baskets a month off of Etsy for $50 a piece. And you're one of those people that's in that $500 range that I talked about off that website. I did find another website that said successful stores sell their 40,000 a month.
I bet they do.
So I don't know how they determined what a successful store is.
I think they determine it by the fact that they sell $40,000.
Yeah, but I did find numerous other stores that said somewhere around an average was 500 or something like that. And that seems to make sense, right? A lot of people are not going to be successful at all. A handful of people are going to be overwhelmingly successful. And a bunch of people are going to live kind of in this middle ground range. So if you want to build a website and they get found on Google, get found and people buy your stuff, how are you going to do that? Right.
And we've done a bunch of podcasts on that.
Okay.
so you're either going to do it by through paid advertising, on online paid advertising through Google or Bing or Facebook or Instagram or something like that. And that's probably the most likely place for you to get someone's attention in the short term, is by writing one of those platforms a check and seeing if you can't get somebody interested in your products and go to your online store instead of your Etsy store.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can, if you're new to all of this and trying to figure out what to do, hopefully you've learned a lot today. And but you should go through, and there's other podcasts to listen to from us here at Custom Apparel Startups, where we've got how to get found on Google, about social media, building niche markets, different ways to advertise. And those are huge conversations in and of themselves. That's why they're their own episodes. But you can get a product and be a small business and decide that you want to sell a certain type of mug or hat or gift basket and advertise on through Google search or Bing search or social media. You can advertise through influencers, become an influencer yourself, go viral. There's a lot of different ways people sell and make money, get referral business. Most people are doing it that way.
Yep.
And if you're going to do any of those things, then, you're best to send it to your own store.
Yeah,
because it's going to be a lot less. It'll cost you a lot less. It'll give you a lot more control. And then there's a whole nother conversation about what marketing control you have when somebody is in your own store.
Right. I would like to bring up this, and some of our customers I know do this, is, you really don't have to decide between the two options. Okay, you don't have to cut the strings with Etsy completely if you want to start another online presence. If you are starting to do the hustle yourself, you can create a store on Wix or eBay or BigCommerce or anything like that. And then you can send all of your earned customers over to your platform, and then just let Etsy introduce you to new customers. You can sell some things on there. And then I think you had told a story about how you found something on Etsy and then ended up purchasing on a company website.
Yeah. So some gardening, farming hobby stuff I'm into. And I was
legal.
I was looking for just some certain things for that. And And when I was within there, I was looking for kind of basically soil nutrients and stuff like that for some products like that. And I was looking for kind of pre-mixed fertilizer type of stuff that was designed, just specific stuff. And I found some stuff on Etsy, and then then I found separately some information on Reddit, I think it was, and I was just kind of reading all around, learning some stuff. And then one of the person on Reddit had their own online store, which was the same product that I'd seen on Etsy.
On Etsy.
So they had both. And what they were doing was the hustling that they were doing on Reddit by being in forums, commenting, answering questions, recommending their products, they were sending to their e-commerce store, which was like a simple Shopify store or something like that. And then they also knew that other people were going to Etsy to search for their product. And they had a store set up on there, and the products were like a couple bucks more on Etsy.
Right. Because they're paying for the fees.
Because they're paying for the fees.
But people are buying it on Etsy.
Yeah.
Right.
At the fee. So I remember, emailed and kind of just asked about it. I said, I do marketing, I'm curious. And that's pretty much what they said. They said, yeah, I get some business off Etsy. It's done well for me. But I'm trying to work a little bit more, and that's why I'm on, Facebook and Instagram and Reddit and things like that, is because I'm trying to grow like my own store too. Yeah, so it's very inspirational to see that you absolutely can do both and be successful running both, and you decide which one wins, which one's better, what direction you want to go.
And I don't know what the service agreement looks like with Etsy, but I do know that a common tactic is if someone buys your customized product on Etsy, when you do the delivery, you can put in a flyer of whatever you want, including links to your website, links to your Shopify store, your eBay store, et cetera, someplace else that you would rather they go and buy next time. Yeah. So in that case, you're kind of using Etsy as a marketing platform, just like you would pay-per-click for a social ad. You're kind of paying Etsy to be your social ad.
That's interesting. I have no clue what the rules are for that, but I know that I've seen at minimum a card come in with a product with social media platform, like Instagram accounts and stuff. So that is interesting, but definitely, understand the rules for operating on there, and they've got a whole page of rules you can find.
I bet they do.
I did see that today. So I think that covers it all. So in the end, should you leave Etsy or move your store? Depends.
Yeah,
maybe.
Good answer.
What's great about it is since it's your business, you get to pick.
Yeah. And
you decide what's right for you. And I just think that that's awesome.
Yeah.
Just in and of itself. Yeah.
And if you're an Etsy seller now and you've got a big Etsy seller community that you talk to, hey, why don't you share this podcast and let them kind of decide for themselves, give them some tools to help make the decision whether or not they want to leave for another platform, or whether they do the math themselves and realize that Etsy is still a smoking deal for their business, or if they want to try the hybrid approach and just start experimenting with the home of their own while they still rent their space from Etsy.
Great. Well, thanks for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast and you aren't familiar with ColDesi or Coleman and Company, that's kind of the sponsor of this podcast per se. So you could visit ColDesi.com and see all types of personalization equipment like embroidery machines and t-shirt printers. And I don't know, basically, if you want to print on something, we sell a machine that does it.
True.
So check it out. You can live chat with folks there. If you're running a store and you're still operating off of a Cricut or a home hobby embroidery machine, we've got a lot of transitional stuff that is the next step for a ton of folks out there who are being successful. So check it out.
Great way to put it. All right. This has been Mark Stevenson
and Mark Vila.
You guys have a great business. Etsy or not.
Okay.